Make sure your insurance doesn't come up short. Get gap cover with ALA. For more information, follow the links in the description.
Hello everybody, today on the channel, Audi's offering to the gods of vanity and excess, the RS Q8. To some, the cut-price Lamborghini Urus, and to others, a VW Touareg with ideas above its station. And I know, nobody needs a 5-meter long, 2-meter wide, 2.3-ton luxury SUV coupe, which will do 0 to 62 in under 4 seconds and has 600 horsepower. But here we are. And if we were being honest with ourselves, we'd acknowledge the fact that just about nobody in Britain even needs all-wheel drive. So let's not ask if you need one, because you know you don't. Instead, let's ask, do you want one, and is it any good? Enjoy. It's funny, I figured that it would only really be us petrolhead types that know underneath this is a Lamborghini Urus. It shares the same basic chassis, engine, gearbox and various other componentry with that car. But it turns out the general public is very much aware too, because a few people have asked me, oh, is that the one that's basically like the Lamborghini? And that surprises me. Very useful to know too, because where today the cheapest Urus is still about 135 grand, and the cheapest Urus you'd want to buy about 160, you could have one of these from about £60,000. Okay, not necessarily one of these, because this is the newly facelifted version, but seeing as there doesn't seem to be much of a difference between them, let's just pretend that they are the same thing. And in any case, no matter which RS Q8 it is that you buy, you'll get a thumping 4-litre Bi-Turbo V8, as you'll see in other Audi products like the RS6, and here it makes 600 horsepower and 590 pounds-feet of torque. That's 800 newton meters, propelling this over-endowed school bus to 62 miles an hour in 3.8 seconds, and if you keep your foot in, onto a limited top speed of 155 miles per hour. Naturally, it also comes with Audi's Quattro all-wheel drive system, and mercifully, unlike the Q4 e-tron that I drove last week, you appear to get some other creature comforts thrown in too. Now, I've got to admit that I was a little bit confused when I first saw the spec sheet for this car. You see, I've been asking Audi for an RS Q8 for a little while, but it's just never been available when I have been. Finally, we managed to get our diaries to align, and so here I am. But when I saw the brochure, I was rather bemused by the fact it said RS Q8 Launch Edition. Considering the car launched in 2019, that seemed a little bit strong. I can therefore only assume it's referring to the fact this is a launch of the facelifted car, which landed last year in 2024. Now, the differences are subtle, and in terms of the mechanicals, I can't really see that anything has changed. Both of them made the same power, both of them have the same performance. Outside, there are some subtle alterations. The front end treatment is a little bit different. Inside, there's a few bits too, but both of them are big buggers. A full 5 meters long, 2 meters wide, meaning that on a British road, they're about as big as you really want a car to get. And in all honesty, on some of my favorite roads, they're a little bit too big. Though I suppose that's what you'd expect if you just forked out £133,000 for this. Yeah. But before I tell you about the standard kit, let's take it through my world-famous patent-pending 3-point turn hill start torture test. The one thing this car does have is a rear wheel steer, which means it's not quite as bad as you might think. Visibility though is shocking. One of the worst cars I've tested in recent times. Big B-pillar back here. It's not the best, but this does have 360-degree cameras. It's also got your parking sensors as well, if for whatever reason you don't trust those. Sadly, no panoramic roof, so this dark leather interior with bits of Alcantara and carbon looks nice, but for those in the back, it's unfortunately a little bit grim. Other nice stuff includes standard fit air ride with lots of different settings I'll go through in a little bit. Naturally, you've also got electric windows all round. Thank goodness that's not an option anymore. And though you don't get double glazing, you do get soft close, which is nice. And in the back, you even get little electric blinds too, for that VIP experience. Also adding to that is the fact that by default, you have masses of legroom. In fact, even if I were an NBA hopeful, and I'm not, am I? You'd still have legroom in the back. But if what you need is not legroom but boot space, you can either fold the seats down, and of course they're split items, or you can even slide them backwards and forwards too. In fact, even all the way forwards, you can still get an adult or two in the back there. It's very, very good, this car, for that, but it should be, shouldn't it? The thing is though, it's not really going to be any better at that sort of stuff than just about every other Q8. The launch edition does seem to be a little bit of a greatest hits of options list stuff, so there's also things like heating and ventilation for the front seats, heating in the rear too. They're also electric with memory, thank goodness, and I make a big deal of that because the Q4 that I reviewed last week was a £60,000 car with manually adjustable seats. I just cannot forgive that sort of stuff, nor silly haptics on the wheel, which luckily this doesn't have. Hallelujah. The one and only gearbox is the venerable ZF 8-speed, which itself is then connected to a Torsen all-wheel drive system. Press one of the little buttons down here for drive select and you'll be greeted with a plethora of different modes, from off-road to all-road, efficiency. In an RS Q8, yeah, no, that ship has sailed. This morning I drove like this was the Pope-mobile and I only just about got 24 to the gallon. The rest of the time it's been getting closer to about 20, and when I have fun in a minute, I'm not going to look because I don't want to know. How bad is this car? Well, Audi delivered it to me with a full tank of fuel on Monday, and on Tuesday I had to fill it up. And of course that's partly because it's thirsty, but also because for a car with such thirst, they didn't give it a very big fuel tank, only 85 litres. In anything else that'd be very generous, nay, perhaps overkill. In this though, not quite good enough. Why can't they just give it a nice round 100 litres like you'd get in a big Range Rover? I don't know. Answers on a postcard. I'm also not quite sure why they felt the need to trim this wheel in Alcantara, because it's not an R8 GT, is it? It's a blooming great big SUV, and this sort of thing is just, well, it doesn't wear very well, I don't like the feel of it, and you just know in 5,000 miles it's not going to work. That beep was to tell me that the drive assist systems have just packed up for whatever reason, but that doesn't really bother me because I'm not a big fan of them anyway. I am, however, a big fan of Audi's virtual cockpit, which, though it's a few years old now, is still very, very good. Has many different modes you can configure it in. You've also got a nice big clear heads-up display and a pair of screens over here. Not a fan of touch stuff for the HVAC, but the top system, you know what, it works well. And other than a weird, thus far one-off incident the other day, where it decided it didn't want to listen to any of my input, it's behaved itself very well indeed. The, as far as I can tell, standard fit Bang & Olufsen stereo is a little bit underwhelming. I was actually convinced that it wasn't even a B&O, because pretty poor this. Considering the price and type of car, it should just be better. There is a chance that in Europe you can get a better version, very often the case, but here I think this is your lot. And it's just not good enough. Ignoring all of the technology that they give you, placing the thing is also a little bit tricksy, partly because it's just so darn big, but also because you don't have much concept of where that corner of the car is. This, though, is a Q8 thing. More specific to the RS Q8 is the fact that even when you're in comfort, it's not an especially comforting ride. It's okay, and it's maybe in line with, say, a Range Rover Sport or similar, but I just want it to be a little bit better. The thing is, though, you know why it isn't better. That's because this isn't a Q8, this isn't an SQ8, this is an RS Q8. And on the steering wheel here, it has a little button that says RS. So what happens when I press that and I want to have some fun? Let's find out. Well, it likely won't shock you to hear that this 600 horsepower car is quite quick. Though if I'm being honest, a bit like one of the last Range Rover Sports that I drove, it's just not as quick as it should be. And that's likely got a lot to do with the fact that that 600 horsepower and 800 newton meters of torque has got a lot of car to carry around with it. Put your foot down, the thing does take a second or two to gather its breath. These later Audi turbos always frustratingly laggy, and yes, I do know the difference between boost threshold and turbo lag, thank you very much. I shall prove what I'm talking about. I'm now doing 4,000 RPM, more or less exactly, which I think we can all agree the car should be on boost by now. Foot down, there's the power. So it's all right, but it's not great. However, in this kind of car, I can kind of forgive that. It certainly gives you something when you put your foot down, and it's a little more impressive if you're progressive with the power, but you think you're going a lot quicker than you are. You think you're doing 110, you look down and actually you're doing 70. Though obviously there I was just doing 59.9, officer. Star of the show, though, has got to be this gearbox, and it's worth pointing out, to get it in its absolute best mode, you have to be in not just manual, but manual sport. How do you get into that? Easy. When you're in normal drive mode, pull the lever down, and that'll change you from D to S, then flick the lever over, and you'll get M gear S. It's good. You can use a little pop and crack on the downshift, sometimes on the upshift too. And it does the business. When you've engaged RS mode, you also get the RS display for the heads up, so you've just got your rev counter, your speed, even your temperature, which is 108 degrees for the oil. I suppose for oil that's okay, isn't it? There are two settings for Audi's configurable RS modes, RS1 and RS2. Quite why, I don't know, but there is a subtle difference between the two, which is that if you're in RS2, you can set the car so that stability is in its dynamic mode, the equivalent to BMW's MDM, so half off. I've currently got it on because, in all honesty, it's dry today and traction is not a problem, courtesy of those 295 section wide Pirellis on 23-inch rims. Yeah, the upgrade ones. And one of the other parameters that does make a big difference to your driving experience is the steering. Now, I'd be lying if I said that it was communicative or interesting in any of the settings, but in comfort, it's kinda light, has a little bit coming through, but not much. In dynamic, it does then weight up, and initially you think it's giving you a lot more, but the more I've driven it, I've become increasingly convinced that it's just weightier for no real extra benefit. I do, however, appreciate in a big car like this having hefty steering because it reminds you of what exactly it is that you're in charge of and ensures you don't do anything particularly stupid. Yes, it does sometimes feel like it's got unlimited grip and does things it just shouldn't be capable of, but the fact is, it doesn't. You can and will run out of the stuff, and when that happens, I don't want to be anywhere near it. But perhaps most frustratingly of all, that suspension, which has pretty incredible adjustment from its lowest load setting up to the full extended off-road setting, it's actually only when you're really on it that it starts to make any sense at all. this is a little section of road I like to call the roller coaster. This bit here, for example, this is where I test suspension setups, because if you can get through here at the national speed limit, and your cameras stay on the car, and your fillings stay in your teeth, you're doing okay. This takes it in its stride. In spite of the fact that the road is very, very lumpy and bumpy, the thing tracks straight and true, it absorbs all of the imperfections and does an excellent job. I just wish it was that good at about 20 miles an hour. And on that note, I have a kind of fundamental issue with the RS Q8, which is the fact that, yeah, okay, it's imperfect at lower speeds, but you were probably aware that was always going to be the case, weren't you? It's great at higher speeds. Again, you knew that. It's an RS Q8. It's basically an Urus, but without the Lamborghini tax on it. My issue is that middle ground, because that middle ground is where I and most other petrol heads live. What you would term sort of 5 to 7/10 driving. It's there where it's just not happy. The engine, for example, either you're off boost, lower in the rev range, and then it's not really particularly keen to respond, or when you do finally get the thing to light up, it just wants to throw you towards the horizon, Star Trek style. If you want to just have a little bit of fun, enjoy yourself, use that mid-range, it's not got the accuracy or the precision that you'd really want it to. It feels like you're kind of constantly flip-flopping between not enough throttle and then far too much. And if you leave it in automatic, it's constantly trying to work out which gear it wants to be in. And with 8 of the things to choose from, it's never quite certain. In drive, it's always too high. In sport, it's always too low. Contrast this then with the first generation Range Rover Sport that I took out recently, with the later 5-litre supercharged V8. Has 510 horsepower, a little bit less torque than this, and weighs a little bit more. But in spite of the fact it's then paired with an old school 6-speed ZF torque converter automatic, it was a far more engaging and interactive thing. That's because with the supercharged engine, you get effectively naturally aspirated style response. So it gives you what you want, when you want. And although it doesn't have quite as much to give, that paired with what I feel was a more entertaining and better road-biased chassis meant it was a car that I just had a lot more fun in. And okay, that's the petrol head take on it, but let's be honest here, I think a lot of petrol heads don't actually buy these. They'll buy the RS6, which is a better looking car that's faster, has the same fundamental mechanicals, but is lighter, therefore a better performer in all regards, and is to me just a much, much cooler car, with a lot less of that sort of, SDE factor about it. And let's look at this another way, because where you might say, I'm a smart man because I've bought an Audi RS Q8 instead of a Lamborghini Urus, there will always be people that look at you and go, you must be a poor man because you bought an Audi RS Q8 and not a Lamborghini Urus. My money though, it'd go one of two ways. If you want the performance SUV, buy a Porsche Cayenne Turbo GT or one of their other products. They've got a few to choose from. Truth is, this is a bit embarrassing, I haven't driven a Lamborghini Urus. Nobody has offered me one. Ever since I took a Huracan up to Scotland and did my piece on it, Lamborghini haven't responded to my emails, which is a shame. It has been updated and improved a couple of times since the original, so you had the S, the Performante, and now you've got the Urus SE, which has an element of hybrid, so it's kind of like the Porsche Cayenne Turbo SE hybrid, and I suspect shares most of that car's underpinnings. But it's still very, very expensive, even though it's a few years old now, and I'm just not convinced it could ever offer significantly more than this already does. Instead, if I were buying myself a dirty, great big SUV that still has plenty of go in it, I'd want to pursue a different path. And I'd look at the Bentley Bentayga, which is another member of this very large VW family, has again fundamentally many of the same components as this, and go for one of the early ones, you can get a W12, and that does make it stand out just a little bit. always kind of upset me, though I guess I shouldn't be surprised, that Lamborghini put in this engine into the Urus. Personally, I think for the money they were charging, they should have done something to it. Even if they reworked it, say they've got a 5-litre version of it, just something, I don't know. But the Bentayga, all right, it's not a looker, is it? Has grown on me a little bit, but it's not perfect. As a luxury thing, oh my, that's got the whole rest of the lineup absolutely beat. And you can pick up one of those. Okay, it's got issues, very, very expensive to run. Even though it does share a lot with one of these, it's going to cost a lot more than one of these to keep going. However, you step inside one of those and you are convinced you're getting into a Bentley and not just a Touareg on steroids. So, RS Q8. Is it a bad car? Wow. No, not really. Is it a car anybody needs? Definitely not. Have I enjoyed my time with it? Yeah, I suppose. It has been a laugh, but if for no other reason than it does things that it just shouldn't. And I do feel at all times driving this very, very self-conscious, which I know might sound silly, but I don't mind Ferraris, Lamborghinis, McLarens, that sort of thing. I'm accepting the Urus here. They're sports cars, they're supercars, they are their own thing. This is trying to pretend that it's somehow sensible. Buying one of these, though, to me, it's a little bit like your accountant friend trying to convince you that he's a wild child because every other weekend he'll have a half of lager top. It's just not convincing, is it? You could find him with a dead body and you'd be certain that it was somehow a wind-up. Oh my God, there was a BMW I've just gone past, and it's the most indescribably ugly thing I've ever seen. I take it back, buy an RS Q8, they're brilliant. BMW used to do genuinely beautiful cars. What happened? Car manufacturers, blink twice if you need help. I'll send someone in to get you. But there we go. That is a look at what must be the stupidest sensible car you could buy, or maybe the most sensible stupid car you could buy. What do you think? Do you fancy one? Do you not? Have you got one? Please tell me. Answers in the comment section down below. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment as well, and we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.